Rome's financial crisis of AD 33 is humankind's first well-documented financial and economic crisis. Today, almost 2,000 years later, it remains relevant to individual investors interested in learning from the setbacks of others throughout financial history. We'll start this fascinating account with its setting, ancient Rome, then the world's wealthiest and most powerful empire, under the rule of Augustus from 27 BC to AD 14. The Roman Empire under Augustus stretched from Syria to Spain, from Belgium to Egypt. Social class in ancient Rome was hierarchical. If you were one of the lucky few, you were a patrician, you owned land and perhaps were a senator. If you were less lucky, you were a plebeian, you farmed for patricians, or worked as an artisan. Plebeians often had to deal with job insecurity, low pay, unemployment or underemployment, and inflation. But it could get worse. You could be one of the many slaves. The rise of Augustus as Rome's first emperor ended a long period of conflict, both domestic and foreign, which had plagued the last days of the Republic. This peaceful period came with a sharp decrease in military spending, and Augustus chose to redeploy the empire's resources. As later reported by Augustus himself, Augustus spent money lavishly in his first 20 years as emperor, paying a fortune for Italian land for discharged war veterans, lavishing large sums on the Roman populace, repairing roads and streets, restoring 82 temples and building new ones, and also building aqueducts, public baths, and temples. Historians Mary and Robert Thornton attempted to quantify Augustus's strong surge in building programs as shown in this chart. This method has been questioned by historian Colin Elliott, who warns us that this attempt to quantify building works by estimating manpower should be treated with caution. Elliott considers such estimations highly dubious. Regardless, Roman historian Suetonius wrote that interest rates fell from 12% to 4%, and the real estate prices rose greatly, benefiting patricians. The Roman economy boomed. Plebeians benefited too, as Augustus often distributed grain for very low prices. The Augustus boom occurred in the beginning of his reign. The same applies to money. Augustus coined heavily and spent lavishly during his early years, when prices rose and credit was easy. In his later years, Augustus spent far less in public works, and, after 10 BC, his coinage dwindled to a miserable trickle, exactly when coins began to flow abroad to pay for imports. Even before the next emperor took over, a monetary contraction seemed to take hold. Augustus died in AD 14 at age 75, probably from natural causes. The next Roman emperor was Tiberius, who repudiated Augustus's expansionary economic policies. In fact, Tiberius was constantly accused of stinginess. Roman historian Suetonius wrote that upon Tiberius' death, it was found that he had stored up 2.7 billion sesterces in his treasury. This hoarded fortune would have been enough to cover the annual budget of Rome for years. The Tiberius financial crisis was triggered in AD 33, as his courts revived old laws that had been passed under Julius Caesar, almost 100 years before, but were since then ignored. One law, the usury law, limited the maximum interest rate that lenders were allowed to charge. Another law stipulated that Roman lenders too had invest at least 2/3 of their capital in Italian lands. This had been to prevent a currency flight and the decline of land values in Italy in times of war. However, as reported by Roman historian Tacitus, the reenactment of these forgotten laws by Tiberius in AD 33 set in motion a sequence of devastating financial events. First, many Roman citizens were brought to court and charged with usury. Second, the Roman Senate ordered lenders to invest 2/3 of their capital in Italian lands. Whereas the emperor granted them 18 months to comply with the reenacted laws, the fallout was swift and severe. The reenacted laws led to disastrous consequences. It hurried the calling in of loans and also the decline of real estate prices. A vicious circle was set in motion. As real estate lenders demanded to be repaid at once to comply with the reenacted law, real estate holders were forced to sell in a declining market, further depressing the value of their real estate collateral. Emperor Tiberius added to turbulence with tyranny, forcibly bringing gold and silver into state coffers. Sextus Marius, the richest mine owner of Spain, was accused of treason on flimsy charges, and all his property, including the mines, was confiscated. Finally, it should be noted that this financial crisis was devastating not only to landowners, who were almost all patricians. Plebeians suffered as well. Rioting was reported, due to very high grain prices. Tacitus wrote that Emperor Tiberius arranged, through a banking commission of 5 senators, to lend to landowners in distress 100 million sesterces, without interest for 3 years. This was a very large sum, equivalent to 1/4 of the annual spending of the Roman state. Modern historian Colin Elliott wrote that these loans via the Roman banking system stabilized the price of land, restored credit, and ensured that the fortunes of heavily leveraged patricians remained mostly intact. The bibliography we learned from to produce this video was written by established historians. All work is cited in this page, and we encourage our intellectually curious viewers to dig deeper for themselves. What do these sources tell us altogether? There is much contemporary historians agree upon. First, all 3 great historians of the period, Tacitus, Suetonius, and Dio, wrote about the Tiberius crisis. Second, this crisis was both financial and economic. Third, a vicious cycle set in, starting with the calling in of debt, leading to real estate dumping, and melting collateral in falling markets, which then led to more debt call-ins. Fourth, it is clear that Tiberius organized a bailout with public funds, and that the crisis abated. At the same time, our study of this bibliography leads us to conclude that some important questions remain open. First, what caused the Tiberius crisis of AD 33? Declining coinage? Declining state spending? Agricultural problems? Political backstabbing? Roman style? A combination of some or all of the above. We simply do not know. Second, why did Tiberius decide to orchestrate the bailout? His true motivations remain unclear, but historian Michael Crawford hints that Tiberius, like all Roman emperors, neither knew of nor cared about coinage or monetary policy. In Rome, money was supplied not for economic reasons, but to preserve social status. The main takeaway for today's individual investors is simple, as patricians found out abruptly in AD 33. If you borrow money to buy real estate without considering the possibility that your loan might be called in or not renewed for whatever reason, you may be forced to sell in a declining market, alongside everyone else. Individual investors are better off avoiding excessive debt or leverage, as some homeowners have sadly found out during the recent global financial crisis of 2008. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to learn more financial history from verified sources, subscribe to our channel and join our community of individual investors who strive to learn from the misfortunes of others to avoid similar fates.